What's up everyone, Master Fox here. I hope you guys enjoyed my little April Fool's video that I posted up earlier today. I hope no one got too mad at me over it. But now I'm going to get back to regular scheduled programming. Today I'm going to talk about the Tale of Qliphort Monolith, kind of continuing off of my earlier video about Qliphort Scout. So let's just take a look at Qliphort Monolith. Qliphort Monolith is kind of like the other part of Qliphort Scout. I think kind of the other OS or central core of the hive mind of the Qliphorts, and it kind of makes sense as to the reason why that is, because both Qliphort Monolith and Qliphort Scout are kind of the two main pendulum scales in the actual card game itself. So let's take a look at the actual card text on Qliphort Monolith and take it apart piece by piece. Qliphort Monolith's text kind of extends off of Qliphort Scout, so where Scouts ends, Qliphort Monolith begins. So at the end of Qliphort Scouts, we were just kind of booting up the system. So now the system is running and we're looking at Monolith as it's running. So in the first line we see unhandled exception at this location in qliphort.exe. Access violation, writing location, and then there's another location. So there's kind of a couple curious things about this line. First, you see the number 666, which is obviously a reference to the devil, which is referencing the Infernoids in this case. And so that means that as the Infernoids are trying to run this, they run into an error. And as I mentioned in my Qliphort Scout video, the Infernoids are essentially hacking into the Qliphorts and taking them over to run them. I think they were originally meant to be run by, or run for, the purpose of Sophia and the Zephyras, which is on the side of the Tree of Life, whereas the Qliphorts running via the Infernoids is on the side of the Tree of Death. I'll mention this a little bit later. It's the Tree of Life and Tree of Death are referencing the Naturia's Sacred Tree and the Qliphort Tree, which we see in a couple of card artworks. It has more complicated details to do with this idea in Jewish mysticism, which the Sephiroth is the Tree of Life and the Qliphoth is the Tree of Death, which is what the Qliphorts are kind of based around. So there's these two errors in these locations which are occurring as the Infernoids are hacking it. So then the next line says, continue, ignoring this error, yes or no? And we don't see any response yet. My assumption is that yes is hit and then they continue because the Infernoids are hacking it and they're trying to utilize the Qliphorts to their own ends. And then following that we see this line of essentially illegible text, and you guys, if you don't know the meaning behind it, you guys are probably wondering what's going on here in this text. So this text is actually a cipher. It's Atbas cipher, which is a type of Hebrew coding, and the translation for it, the literal translation for it in the Japanese version is God is angry on your doing and want to bring fire flood. So this is a very rough translation of it. The actual translation of this TCG cipher translates into contact with the sacred tree is forbidden. The scourge has been unleashed. So let's look at the two parts of that. Contact with the sacred tree is forbidden. So this is referencing El Shaddai Winda and her contact with the sacred tree. We can see this in the art of El Shaddai Fusion, where you see there's El Shaddai Winda there, and then Leo, keeper of the sacred tree. So Leo is trying to protect the tree, but you see Winda coming there to mess with the tree. And this makes a lot more sense because in the OCG, the El Shaddai Fusion card is actually named Contact with the Embodiment of God. So the Embodiment of God is obviously referencing the Naturia's Sacred Tree, which is kind of like obviously the embodiment of God in the dual terminal world. And we see that from the contact with the Sacred Tree itself, Winda causes the unleashing of the Qliphorts, which goes to the second point of the translated cipher in Monolith's text. It says the scourge has been unleashed. So we know that this is referencing the Infernoids through the Qliphorts. The scourge is the Infernoids, which is also referenced in the OCG text which says the fire flood, which the Infernoids are all fire. So this makes sense too. And we can see in the art of Void Seer that Infernoid Atandel is trying to absorb these colored canisters, which make an appearance in the arts of the Qliphorts themselves as kind of these colored spheres rather than canisters. And then we see in the art of Void Expansion that the Qliphort Tree of Death has kind of ascended from the burning Tree of Life, which is the Naturia Sacred Tree. So essentially, all of the events so far have really been caused by El Shaddai Winda. Our contact with the Sacred Tree caused the release of the Qliphorts, which ended up releasing the Infernoids, and that kind of starts the ball rolling in the world as the Infernoids flood the world, and then they try to take control of the dual terminal world. And just one last point, going back to what I mentioned before about the Tree of Life and the Tree of Death. So in the artwork of Void Expansion, you can see the Qliphort tree, which is the Tree of Death, kind of rising out from the Tree of Life, which is Naturia's sacred tree, as it's burning away. And this is essentially what I think is the release of the Scourge, and that is what is said in the text of Qliphort Monolith. So these are just my thoughts and theories about the story surrounding Qliphort Monolith. Tell me what you guys think about it in the comments section below. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and that's it. I'll see you guys in my next video. Thank you.